Hello and welcome to the Miko Bits show, and I'm your host, Miko Bits. Today I have an exciting guest, which is Alex, who created the Alex coin. Alex Masmej, he is an entrepreneur in the DeFi and NFT space, and I think it'll be an exciting show. So, um, as with all of these shows, it's opinion and information and entertainment, but it's not investment advice. So, seek a duly licensed professional, and don't buy things that people on the internet tell you to buy. Yeah. With I guess without further ado, just before we jump in, before we start, if you're interested in Bitcoin and blockchain, please consider clicking that subscribe button and also click the bell so you can get notifications about future videos that I might post. Thank you. Okay, without further ado, hey, it's Alex. How are you?
Hey Miko, how's it going? Super stoked to be here. Thanks you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. It's great having you here from the International Space Station. It's my first show from
Looking at the
space.
moon.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so I guess would be great to just get the first kind of feeling. So, I think that one of the things that is in your claim to fame is the Alex token, right? So you've effectively tokenized yourself. So, maybe you can explain a little bit about, how did that happen?
For sure. So it happened actually, personal tokens, which is a currency that represents someone's work or potential or rights to equity or rights to, a product redeemable, created by that person. It started actually, that was my entry to the space. I was just, last year, just dropped out of a computer science school and just wanted to go to an Ethereum event, right? A blockchain conference, but I didn't have the funds. And so I just tweeted, I'd love to make it if I had unlimited funds to that conference. And someone basically sent me a loan and told me, let's create a token that represents your loan and it's backed by your reputation. And this was called the Alex Masmej loan 2019.
Great.
That's a token on Etherscan that you can check on the blockchain. And so since then, a company called Roll contacted me and told me, we can do a generalized token that can be whatever you want it to be. And we, I decided to call it Alex, and I've done a bunch of experiments with it. And the most notable one, and the one that kickstarted the Alex token traction in some ways, is a small income sharing agreement where I raised $20,000 to say, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to have a bit of cash up front because I'm quite young. This is one of my first ventures that I'm ever starting. And I'd love to get some help. And so this is how it started. And because of the great reaction, I've done actually most other experiments on the Alex token itself. And I'm continuing to do so even right now. So that's
That's
like the small story. Happened in March this year, the Alex token. And so far, so good.
That's exciting, and that's a really fun. It's a fun story, and so you mentioned that you were young. Can you mention how old are you?
So actually, I am less young than I was because I was, I think, 22, turning 23 earlier last year, and now I just turned 24. So
Hey,
this is
happy
why I'm
birthday!
trying to separate my identity from my age anymore, because I feel like 23 is the cutoff for very young people, right? And so now it's like, I'm an
Yeah,
adult.
yeah, you're
Over
just a regular adult. That's great. So,
Yeah.
it's exciting to understand. So, when you talk about kind of experiments with the identity token or with Alex, like, tell me more about like the experiments. Like, like for what have you been doing with it?
So first, it was an income sharing agreement saying, I am seeking $20,000, and I will be move to San Francisco, get a green card or a visa, and start from there. So that was my initial plan. 2 weeks after COVID-19 happens, and so I spent most of my time in Paris. Now I'm in London, and I found it so interesting because I didn't have much of a clue of what my next venture would be. The Alex token was kind of like in anticipation of doing one. At the time, I had Rocket, which was which was a platform that took NFT as collateral, whether it's crypto art or virtual real estate, open worlds like Decentraland, or collectibles, and it was issuing loan against it. But the reason why I decided to slow down and like stop Rocket eventually, because it kind of ended, I think, 2 months ago. And it was really cool. Like we made 6% on ETH after all the loans that we made against NFTs. And I decided I wanted to go for a bigger market because, you know, it's the intersection between DeFi and NFT, two very cutting edge fields. And I thought this was a bit too early. And so I did my token. And then the first thing that comes to mind is that, wait, this is quite successful. Like it actually speaks to people, like investing in someone early is great. And so then I decided to continue doing experiments with that Alex token itself. So it was supposed to be a means to an end. But for the next few months, I just continued pushing the own token because I was one of the first to ever use a personal token to leverage myself. And so in 2 words, initially I thought it would be, you know, getting money up front and getting a board of advisor, because then the people who buy in your token, they now have an incentive to help you, right? To become skin in the game mentors. And so this is kind of what happened. And then 2 months in, Austin Griffiths, which is a pretty known developer in the Ethereum ecosystem, told me, you know, let's do something with your token where people could vote with their token with the ERC20 and sign a message so that, you know, you don't even have to pay gas fees. It's free. You sign with your wallet any decision. And so this is when I did something called Control My Life, where people could basically pick a tiny habit of me in July 2020, so like this year. And I chose like between fun things, you know, I just wanted to experiment with maybe the future of creators, influencers or entrepreneurs, of like asking for governance by people who have the stake and who have the incentive to drive you as a person, because they hold that token. And so it was basically like a funny, lightweight habit, like running 5 kilometers every day for the month of July, which I've done. So I've done that after my income sharing agreement. And then 2 months later, I did a partnership with Whale, which is another personal token. It's called, like, it's more a community token, but it's under the same umbrella of social tokens, which is a new primitive, which I think will be the next wave after DeFi and NFT. It sounds really interesting to me. And so Whale is a community of people who collects NFT, so art or any valuable collectibles. And they, you know, we said to each other, let's exchange our tokens and give our tokens to the other community. So I gave Alex to the Whale community. The Whale token is going to be distributed to the Alex holders in 2 weeks' time. And it's an amazing experiment in cross marketing, pretty much, because no value was given to advertisers. And now each community knows each other. And it's more than just the financial value given, because I've been on an AMA and an interview on the Whale community. Same for the Whale creator, went on my Telegram group chat. And so, yeah, this is a great cross-marketing experiment. So these are the 3 main things. But then Alex is a bit like a small company. Like I've hired people for a personal website. I've had a Telegram group where you need to buy some Alex to get in that group. And if you ever sell your Alex token, you will be kicked out of that group. So it's a very fun mechanism. Then what else? I've got a monthly newsletter, kind of like an investor update for entrepreneurs. But this time it's for my Alex holders and people who are willing to pay for the subscription. So really, there's tons of things that I've done, many, you know, around, so income sharing agreement first, voting, exclusive access to content, marketing. But then, you know, now there's 2 things. Like it's great to do experiments, but now I want to maybe, you know, go back to my roots, which is building startups, building fully fledged out products, and stop doing this kind of small hacks and experiments. And so the future is super exciting, and I'm really excited about what's next. But yeah,
That's
so far,
big,
lots of
and
experiments.
that's very fun. I think in the 1990s there was actually an experiment which was Justin TV. I don't know if you remember this.
Nice.
Yeah, but you know, it's kind of reminiscent of that, which is, you know, someone who really put their own lives on the internet in a video form. This was way back in the olden days, back when videos were like this size, and
I know, and I hope I become the same as Justin Can, right? Then Twitch is, sold to Amazon for billions of dollar.
yeah, that was
I would
a
love
that
to
was a
achieve
successful project. He did well with himself,
that.
and very very creative person and a very successful one. So that would be a great template. Obviously it's a completely new internet with tokenization and the internet of value. So you were talking about kind of future stuff. So I'd love to kind of get into that. Like, tell me what you're thinking. And I obviously you looked at Rocket, which is sort of lending associated with NFTs, right? So you can have some kind of an item and you can, get lending of the item. But I guess which I think makes the most sense for things like game items, So I guess, the big question becomes, what's next in your mind? You were talking about bigger markets.
So what's next in my mind? So in the past 6 months, I was figuring out how to do. So I'm really passionate about two markets, which is consumers and founders, entrepreneurs. And so one path, which is something that I'm exploring with Seed Club, which is a social token incubator that helps people explore that token. Because the truth is, I kickstarted the trend in March and we're in October, right? It's only be barely 6 months. Like, this is such a new industry, such an untapped opportunity. And so one path of my future potentially would be creating a personal token fellowship, creating the Y Combinator, reinventing the pre-seed round with those tokens, where Silicon Valley is not anymore the place to be to fundraise. And if you have a community of just a few thousand followers, like I've had in March, you can leverage your reputation, you can monetize better. So that's one path. And I'm super excited to be part of Seed Club. I'm a founding member. And so it's an incubator where RAC, which is a Grammy-winning award artist, is going to experiment as a creator. I will experiment as an entrepreneur. There will be Brian Flynn, which is a content creator, ex-Dapper Labs, a very smart person, and others. So maybe creating a personal token fellowship to build the new decentralized, teal fellowship, where you can really leverage talents from anywhere in the world just by fundraising in crypto, and also for investors to be able to invest in new talents in ways that wasn't possible before. So that's one path for me. But the other path is that I'm really into startups. This is what got me into crypto and just funding my own startup. And so, let alone a fellowship, building a product, maybe a platform for people to create their token, because it's kind of like an edge I have as a founder, is that I can use and dog food my own experience and my own token with my own holders in the platform that I'm creating, kind of like Justin TV did with himself, and then Twitch. Or something around DeFi, which I'm really excited about for consumers. So how do we repackage the DeFi, the NFT, the crypto ecosystem that we went so deep down the rabbit hole, and how to make it digestible for consumers? So also exploring that, and super excited for anything that comes. So right now I'm just, building and seeing what sticks. But I'm not too pressed for time. I know this is a very long game. This future is going to take decades to build, and I'm taking my time. And in the meantime, of course, experimenting with the ALEX token and keeping my audience engaged, and making sure that I succeed as an entrepreneur.
How many holders are there for Alex token? This is obviously easy to find out, but
Yeah, I think right now 350. So roughly 310 on Etherscan are viewable, but then on the Tri-Roll platform, you can have it off chain. So you just sign in with the email and a password, and so it doesn't count on Etherscan, so it's not viewable. Around 350 people. I checked 2 days ago.
Oh, that's really cool, and it's such an interesting trend. I mean, I think one of the business models that I think there are business models that are emerging around artists and celebrities, such as like OnlyFans, and there's obviously other ones like Patreon. So do you see a relationship between these business models and it feels like the OnlyFans thing is really the business model caters towards sort of super whales, and it also caters more towards a recurring or sponsorship type of model, right? So these are kind of the emerging tendencies, right? So what's your thought about things like recurring, and what's your thought about like these other kind of non-crypto models?
Right. So yeah, definitely recurring revenues, ARR, all of those things create sustainability. Um, so it's really needed. The problem with Kickstarter, Patreon, even Spotify with streaming is that first of all, on the legacy financial system and the normal Web2 platforms, there's way more fees for the artists. And second, it is just for the early believers and the people who want to buy that product that purchase that subscription, right? And so with crypto, there's this magic component of speculation where if you don't push and there's too much speculation, it kind of like burns the purpose of it. If you just use the right amount, not only you get your early believers, but you also get the rational, economically rational investors that will come. And so that grows your pool of early people needed to kickstart your business and give you the funds and the sustainability that you seek. And that is great. And so this is why improving on Kickstarter or Patreon model, you have Zora and Foundation right now, which are two great startups based in San Francisco that basically say, okay, like the price of a subscription, the price of an item, every time someone buys it, the price goes up. Every time someone sells it, the price goes down. In crypto, it's called a bonding curve. There's no need for liquidity at the start. And so the artist or that person gets the lion's share of the speculation. And it's a win-win for everybody because you can invest in early artists. You can get the product at the fair market price. You also control the secondary market because, for instance, like Kanye West has Yeezys, which is a sneaker collaboration with Adidas. It's sold at X price, but then the secondary market explodes because of the scarcity. But in crypto, not only you can encode the scarcity, but you can also control the primary market and decide the price. And so if the demand is really high, the price will go up. And so the creator can monetize much more. So that's what I would say, like crypto really enables to add more value than Patreon, which is just, I'm paying for that service. And here you can pay, but you can also speculate on that service as well.
Got it. Got it. It's very interesting. So you were talking about future scenarios about kind of consumerization or giving access or making it much easier for people, either just DeFi in general or this kind of tokenization pattern. So I guess, how would you envision, a future where people can do this very easily?
So I would say, just like Twitch streamers, not everyone will create their own token, but probably everyone will at least hold tokens from a community, a fellowship, or an artist or an entrepreneur that they care about. And this is great because it distributes assets to more people. Right now, most people hold assets for stocks or others, but it's very limited. And so giving this to most consumer would be awesome. So I see a future where anyone that wants to start any project will create this sort of equity that is super liquid and software based, that is tokens, and not only just people who wants to start something for themselves alone as a politician, creator, entrepreneur, but also community first. So why not like a subreddit or a Facebook group or a political party, like a collective first could create a token and give them to the most active and engaged participants so that it becomes a powerful tool for coordination and collaboration at scale. And we've never really seen this before. There's Wikipedia, that's a really great open source collective of people. But what if there was financial incentive tied to it? Like how much bigger could it become? And we know startups is a great model. You start with 3 co-founders, you can build billions of dollars of company. But I'm sure that communities could start from scratch and build enormous things that we just don't even know of right now.
Have you been involved in discussions about, regulatory implications?
Yeah, so I'm very confident of the legal team at Roll, which is the company that issued my token. Um, so pretty much every use case in the Alex token is a utility, right? So like you get access to my newsletter, you can vote on my life, which is basically like, signing a message and proving that you own those tokens. You can access my Telegram group. And so all of these things bring utility to my token. Um, and yeah, like it's not guaranteed that my token is going to go up or down. It is not tangible. And so my income sharing agreement was an OTC deal, a private deal with 30 people at the start, where I give 10% of the supply. But the entirety of what's available on secondary trading markets is only utility and does not entitle you to any dividends or income or things like this.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, good. I guess any other kind of thoughts about the development of the space? Where do you see DeFi today, and where do you see it? In a few years.
So right now, DeFi has really grown exponentially since the start of comp. So since 2017, the space has had kind of like a PTSD of tokens. No one was doing tokens anymore. No one was doing DAOs anymore as well because of the DAO hack in 2016. But now that the space recovered, innovation completely exploded. Um, and we're seeing tons of incentive being pushed to the extreme. So the distribution of tokens, like also wars between protocols, like which pool to incentivize the most, um, and like how to compose on top of each protocol the best way possible. So Wired composes on all the different yield farming pools and is being reviewed by some of the top talents in the space. So the YFI token, which is a token of Wired, probably has a lot of value because there's a ton of talents that hold the token that have the incentive to fix. And so it's the first instance actually of a community building a great product, not just one person or a startup sized team. So DeFi is really exploding. It is still a huge rabbit hole. We haven't fixed, fiat on ramp, layer two, UX. So like UX is like a wallet, for instance, that's simpler than MetaMask. Like no offense again, MetaMask, like I love, and also the MetaMask lead and founder is Alex Holder, but it's just that, there's a few gateways that prevents normal people from accessing the space. But DeFi is great. And so that's why I'm excited about NFT and community and social tokens, is because it's easier for people to understand, right? Like art or investing in someone, having a stake in a community of artists, or something that just lets you forget all the financial primitives and the complexity of the technology. Is great.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem in some ways to consumerization is really the custody problem, right? Because in a sense, like, the definition of decentralized and centralized, should really hinge on, ownership, right? So, if the idea that it's handled by a custodian, it's kind of awkward, right? So it basically means that at some point, the participant needs to have custody over the private keys, right? So I guess what I would say is, that's a hurdle when it comes to consumerization, because, obviously most consumers are not all that knowledgeable about public key cryptography as yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, because you want people to hold their own assets and to benefit from, maybe interoperability of NFTs, that, you can reuse art, and maybe like, in the future, there will be some art galleries where you could directly sell your NFT to that gallery to like for 2 weeks. And if you don't hold it yourself, and it's a custodian, then they will take a percentage of it. It just goes back to the rent seeking problems that we had previously. But at the same time, if you give people the full self ownership and self custody, they also have to deal with the risks. And so we
Yes.
need a UX that blocks every single loophole where they could lose their funds or assets. And so that's a very hard balance to strike. I think Taurus Wallet is doing a really great job at being semi-decentralized, because you log in with your Facebook or Google, so it's familiar to people, and they can easily create a wallet for you that's not too hard, where you can have your assets, you can buy easily, and they don't take as many fees as other exchanges or more centralized services. So yeah, like it's getting there, but it's quite slow. But I mean, like the technology is so young; it's been only 5 years.
Yeah, and the thing that's really interesting becomes that you quickly, like, the rabbit hole is a great phrase, that I've seen a lot around DeFi, because it gets fairly complex quickly, right? Because even if you handle things like identity really smoothly, there are still things like contract permissions, and so even it's like, how do you make contract permissions, obviously, like, permissions aren't the most kind of complicated things to understand, because it's clear, things like, oh, well, you're giving permission to the contract to spend X number, maybe a very large number of a specific type of token, all of these things, right? But even so, it does require kind of some amount of people dealing with these ideas. So
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a huge pain point that I didn't mention, which is, asking permissions for spending tokens or meta transaction, which could solve that, which is, the developer does the transaction itself. Every time we book a ride with a Uber, we pay 10 cents to AWS, but no one knows that. No one should know that. Just like when you interact with the Ethereum blockchain, you're not supposed to pay the gas fees. And maybe right now, one blocker is that the gas fees are so high that the developer is not willing to pay for it. And so that is why there is less incentive. But I hope that when we go to Ethereum 2, or maybe there's an Ethereum killer that comes, or if there's a layer 2 solution that makes it free or virtually free, then it should be handled by the developer and taken as, overhead costs of doing business. That would be a huge reliever for the user. And even the permission of asking for a token should be the exact amount, just one time, and automated every single time. And I'm curious about new possibilities here of automating this. I haven't seen. I mean, Meta Cartel, which is a group I'm from, like worked on this, and there's some solutions like Tabuki or Gas Station Network, but I
yep.
don't see this widely used because in DeFi, for instance, it's a monetary transaction. So there's already money involved, and you don't mind paying that fee because that trade is going to be net positive for you anyway. But like in the future, if you want to have non-monetary or non-directly financial transactions, you need meta transactions. You need to hide the permissions, the all of these blockers for sure.
Yeah, and we talked a little around Meta Cartel, but we'd love to just get the deep dive quick and just encourage people around it.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you enter the crypto space, crypto is an emergent industry. It's not like AI where there's tons of conferences, and it's a smaller space. And so you can access it via Coinbase, which probably has a ton of great talents coming out of university, or you can access it via Consensus, which also employs a ton of people. It's a bit corporate focused, but it's great. And because Ethereum is a wild world where Ether is the main currency, you can create community out of nowhere. And so the outliers, the weird ones, the ones that were not in Stanford, that still have so much passion that they want to break through walls. This is where Metacatel comes in. And so
Nice.
it's a bunch of people that reunited under one common cause at the start, which was we want to fix meta transactions. So as we said, it's very annoying that users have to click and pay the transaction fees because no one pays the AWS fees, right? It's the service provider. And so this work has been done in this space, and now it's proper projects and companies working on it. And so it left a group of friends with a culture around it, and they said to themselves in mid 2019, let's create a DAO where we pool funds and we invest in Ethereum applications. And it would solve the tragedy of the commons problem, which is, Ethereum startups and applications right now do not make tons of money. Y Combinator, they say, if you're in crypto, move to fintech. You're not going to build a billion-dollar company. But the thing is, if no one does that, of course, the Ethereum ecosystem doesn't make progress. And so if we all pool a bit of funds and we fund hackathon winners, just a few $1,000s so that they can develop their application, we can really boost the ecosystem forward, and everyone just puts a small amount, and it amounts to a ton of funds that we can deploy effectively. And so DAO is very simple, just a shared wallet where every decision, if you don't agree, you can leave and you don't suffer the financial consequences of that decision. And so what happened is I was one of the first person to ever contact Peter Pan, which was the creator, the summoner that we call of the DAO. And I helped out in finding teams and people that we funded. And now there's some great successes like Zapperfy. They just raised a seed round of a few $1 million.
Oh yeah. I've had Nodar on the show. He's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, Nodar is amazing. And so, we found Nodar way before any VC saw it. Like he was just doing an educational resources. And now he's super successful, and I'm rooting for him to disrupt, Blockfolio and the big.
DeFi Dad just joined Zapper, so
exactly, yeah. And so they also attracting great talents, so it's awesome. And same for Andre Cronje from Wi-Fi. Like we were the first to fund them, or all of these people that were in the dark in 2018 and 2019. We funded them. Same for I don't know, Tornado Cash, which was funded by Moloch. Now it's a huge tool for mixing and privacy on Ethereum. And now, so I stayed on the Beta Capital grants team, but now there's a venture fund because they were like, well, we have a great deal flow now. And so it's now a collective of angel investors handling around, I think, $1 to $2 million, but they hold a lot of ETH. So it's very volatile as a fund. And, with the bull market, they probably will explode in capital, right? And so that's one point. And it's actually an LLC as well. So it's the first DAO or, company that was initially incorporated on Ethereum that is now incorporated as an LLC that is regulatory compliant. And I find it amazing. And so Metacapital became something amazing. And it still is a great way for new talents to break in the space. And it's not just me. There's also Cooper Tully, which was also someone that even I onboarded when I was in San Francisco doing events for Metacartel. And now he is the lead contributor at The Defiant, which is a major publication in the Ethereum ecosystem. And there's tons of stories like this. And I'm super grateful for being onboarded in Ethereum so quickly and with the best people ever that I could find in that ecosystem without, having a job or without committing to something, so that I can directly optimize for the highest learning curve ever.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and what a great organization, and it's really exciting and inspiring to learn about it. So I guess any last kind of parting thoughts about the future, things you're jumping into?
So how do you see the future of crypto immediately? I know that you're an advisor in XRP, right, Arlington, or what are some exciting companies that you see as part of Gumi? I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to share. So, we're obviously very bullish on the DeFi segment. We do have a number of as yet unannounced investments to make there. We do think that custody is a very important one. There's a huge kind of shift that's occurring between these kind of centralized and decentralized exchanges. Obviously with AMM, you're seeing like a huge shift towards the DEX world and DEX liquidity. People make all kinds of sort of erroneous comparisons. I think the thing that's important to understand is the growth and the rate of growth, rather than the absolute size. Binance is still bigger, but obviously, if you really take CZ's word at his word, he feels very threatened. Like he feels like, DEX is going to take over, so I think these are very important. From the perspective of things like ETH scalability, I think right now we're kind of taking a breather. I think gas prices have come down, I think, which means that network activity is coming down, so I think that the sort of yield chasing vampiric fruits and papayas and pineapples and pickles. Like I think that phase is slowing down. And I think that in a way there was a phase almost where almost like new money was coming in, and their first experience in the rabbit hole was kind of some kind of crazy Ponzi Name food coin, and so that's not sustainable. So, I think we're taking a bit of a breather, but I think one of the things that's very exciting is, we're absolutely seeing, novel layer two. We're seeing a lot of advancements in projects like Optimism, which I think is great. They're doing a thing with SNX, so they're doing a synthetics demo, which is extremely performant and fast. So we're seeing great solutions. Obviously, there's many others that are working in this space. I interviewed Solana, and we're going to have one with Scale, and so we're definitely excited about all those things. We do see kind of an emergence, obviously, of things like DOT, and the thing that I think is really exciting about October is that we are seeing the emergence of these kind of long running projects that are really starting to bear fruit, right? So we're going to see things like Filecoin mainnet in the fair near future, right? So a lot of these types of infrastructures are going to really, I think, advance the platform, right? Because people have been thinking IPFS, but like Filecoin is really where the game will be. And if you think about their space race, Filecoin has successfully launched petabytes of storage, and now they're going to go really further. So it won't be long before we're talking about exabytes of storage and be sitting within the context of a Filecoin, right? So, for me, like, it feels like we're taking a breather, but I think that the things that will potentially help to, open the floodgates will be advancements in some of these key areas. So I think that obviously the layer 2 scalability area is extremely important. I think we're also going to see the launch of ETH2 staking, which is the phase 0. And to me, like, when I see that, it's not about solving EVM scalability by any stretch. For Ethereum to do it natively in ETH2, that's far future, right? But the thing that becomes interesting is that the staking by itself produces kind of a vector for the ETH base price, right? Which is that more and more ETH base price, ETH is going to get locked into ETH2 staking contract, and that will choke the supply, right? Which will cause kind of a really interesting, thing about the price, right? So, I see kind of a really pretty bright future. I'm happy to see kind of local declines as a mechanism of, I would call it like a native stress testing. So, if Ether goes down in price, it's almost like it's a test, right? Because it feels like, these things can't only be tested by the ETH price going up and up and up, right? Like some of these systems have to be tested when the ETH price is going down. Otherwise, they're not well built. We can't know if they're well built, right? They could be, they might not be. So we need to see it all.
Oh yeah, for sure. Price is definitely a huge function of the security of the network, and it's great because we've actually had a fair amount of time with the ETH price being quite low. Even today, it's insane to think that DocuSign, which is a company that also signs electronically contracts, is valued the same amount as Ethereum, which is reinventing finance, right, and building maybe the next biggest financial infrastructure in the world. And so I could see how it is super undervalued, but at the same time, it is a great test to see the network still works okay, even though it's not too big, and it is still hasn't been 51% attacked, at least not the Ethereum normal version.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, like excited for phase 0. I think, it won't change our day-to-day lives for sure, but it helps push the narrative that the team is making progress, and the exceptional engineers working on Ethereum 2 are shipping. And I think it's something that the public would love to be updated on, and super stoked about the next few weeks.
Yeah. And the other one that I'm kind of tracking too is, I'm trying to get Gavin Wood or Jutta Steiner from Parity onto the show, because I'm excited to hear more about the progress around Dot, because I do think Polkadot is another one of those projects that's been really just working on delivering software for quite a while. And I think having this kind of alternate universe with like essentially it's a different programming model as well, so it kind of offers a pretty exciting frontier for developers.
Well, yeah, it's great. The more different projects, the more we can learn faster and experiment faster. So super excited. I'm not an Ethereum religious person by any means, and super excited to see even Flow, Near, all the others, whether they build bridges or complementary or substitute of Ethereum. I want to see them all, and let's see what are the pros and cons of every and each one. And it's open source, right? So they can all learn from each other and copy paste.
Yeah. We love that. So I think it's been an incredibly innovative time, and I think that each one of these kind of periods, kind of drives new innovation. But one of the things that I've been very happy about with this latest phase is that we've seen a shift in people's attitudes towards pragmatism, right? So instead of kind of insisting on things like universal, mathematically provable oracles, things that like nobody's insisting on that anymore, right? People are more insisting on things. We're developing products like insurance on top of oracles, and we're developing products that are more about kind of financial security, but not mathematical security. Like if I can give you financial security, do you really need mathematical security? Like, no, because I'm going to make you whole, right? And, as we start to see, NXM and Nexus paying for things like BZX, and the issues there, like as we see more and more and more of this kind of financial assurance, then people start to feel more comfortable just doing, reasonable business and financial things on top of the infrastructure, right? As opposed to being in a mood where it's like Bitcoin or nothing, right? Like I need proof of work, I need 100% security, it needs to be mathematically proven, so just super paranoid, right? And, to me, what's happening with things like layer 2 is that there's more of a mood of kind of like, if the guy rips me off, then he's going to get burned. He'll get slashed, and let's just do it, and it's insured anyway. So if it crashes, then I'm going to get my money back from the insurance pool, so there's much more pragmatism. There's much more kind of like, let's just go, like, let's try to make this as good as possible and not perfect, which I like, because it used to be perfect or nothing. And I think that was a long time where we were like perfect or nothing.
Yeah. Inflexibility is not a great feature, and I even think maybe Bitcoin will evolve in the future, and that would, in something that sounds crazy to hardcore Bitcoiners today, and so inflexibility is never the right answer. This is why there is now governance and votes on chain, like the compound governance module where you can submit code, or the opposite with Wi-Fi, where you first vote on something on a platform like Snapshot and then you build the code. And so that means that, you are adaptable and flexible to the future that no one really knows about. 100%, like it doesn't have to be perfect, because it will statistically never be perfect on day one in a super fast and evolving environment. Like we always say, technology goes fast, but crypto is another level. Like I've been there for a year, but like it's a totally different ecosystem now.
Well,
like,
and it's amazing, right? Because I feel like this is that people are moving towards yield, right? And that really in a perfect market, which of course this is not, right? In a perfect market, there's a beautiful balance between risk and yield, right? So in a sense, if you're seeking yield, you can just be like more yield, right? And, if you really try to just solely maximize yield, what you're really doing ideally is you're ideally moving towards risk, right? You're risking more and more, right? And so, but the thing that I think is so nice is that when you look at something like Compound, or if you look at something like Aave Lend, and you look at these ecosystems, like the yields are starting to get more mature looking, and to me, like that's great, right? Because you want to have a spectrum of products, and you want to have, because ultimately, if you look at the comparison of CeFi and DeFi, right, like how much yield are you getting from your, bank account in the traditional world, right, which is very, very close to zero, right? Like the prime lending rate in the United States from FOMC is like zero. Right. So like, it's hard to imagine how your regional bank will give you more. Right. Like so to me, if you look at, if you look at compound finance and like, 4%, or, if you look at these stable yields, like it's still great. Right. Like it's still worth pursuing, even though, and obviously the bigger question is from a global market perspective, does that actually reflect the total risk? It's unclear. Right. So like, it's really more about risk appetite and risk thesis. And, but I think it's great. I think the days of like people saying, well, if it doesn't have at least 200% APY, then it's completely waste of time, and then I'm really, some people thinking like at least 10,000% APY or 100,000% APY, so it's sort of like, maybe, or maybe not.
It's crazy yield, and also it gets updated every block, and it's never that much it can't be sustainable at these levels. So yeah, I totally agree with your point. I think right now there's basically like a very macro arbitrage level between, DeFi, which is super tiny, and so it's not very efficient because of the fiat on ramp and off ramp being very slow. And so because we see an arbitrage, that's why the yield are so high on compound, because money can move much more freely, and so it's much more valued to borrow some funds on DeFi. But eventually, in a world where crypto is ubiquitous and everywhere, I don't think the yield will be much more than the banks today. Maybe a bit more because, of course, crypto is more efficient money fundamentally, but it probably will be something like 2 to 3% or 4% at most. It will never be 200,000% to the masses. And the masses don't want that. They think it's scammy, and they kind of have, they're kind of right, because it is scammy for someone non-educated. Because if you're non-educated, you cannot distinguish scams from normal projects with very high yield and high risk. So it's good that they have this kind of reflex and reaction. So the future will be much, much closer to the bank rates. But for now, we can enjoy the great yield if you're risk taking.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, like Andre Kranya said it very well, which is that it's sort of, it's not really wealth creation as much as transfer, in the sense that like, it's moving, the wealth is moving from those who don't know towards those who know, right? That was kind of his way of framing it, right? So in a sense, if you're, a couple ways of looking at where is the yield coming from, right? In a sense, like it comes back to what Warren Buffett says, right? Which is, if you don't know who the mark at the table is, it's you, right? Like, like you're the one that's giving the yield to the others, if you don't really understand the mechanism, or if you don't understand, what you're getting into, which I think is one of the things we've seen more recently in the pullback is we've seen more recently that, people are getting rug pulled, and so people are increasingly wising up to like, oh, I see, I'm the yield, like, others are getting lots off of me, and okay, good, good lesson.
I think the fact that the market kind of stopped the euphoria that was quite momentary is a bear trap. So which means like, there was a micro bull market this summer that kind of was a repricing event of the huge pessimism and very down feeling of the crypto community since 2017. So it kind of repriced to like a bit higher levels. But the next year or 2 or 3 or whatever time frame are going to be extraordinarily enormous in terms of wealth creation, probably. Like I can't predict, but
no, I'm optimistic about it, and I believe that your narrative is absolutely the way I reason about the space as well, in terms of the things of market timing, which is that if you look at the current kind of levels of price, like they're definitely up from kind of like 6, 10, 12 months ago, and so like for sure that vector on Ethereum and on a lot of these kind of like very mature on Aave and Comp and Maker and all these kind of wonderful kind of base assets, right? So when you think about the DeFi lift, the ecosystem is lifted by these kind of novel, durable base protocols. I would include, Wi-Fi in there. I'd definitely include some of these really new base layer protocols, right? But the thing that's so interesting is the ecosystem isn't going to be lifted to the next layer on like based or even on like yield wars, or even something that has functional utility like pickle, so like I guess what I'm saying is that that's not the next lift, right? To me, the next lift is kind of things like dot, things like optimism, things like filecoin, filecoin not as an inherent kind of compute layer, but more like just building. If you're going to build a world computer, like you'd like to have some storage. So like, let's and maybe a graphics card, so let's go ahead and, try to build something, that has the infrastructural power to lift yet to the next level. And I think that, for now, because I think we're taking a rest, right? Like, there's big platform players that will deliver big infrastructure, this fall, right? So it's not even like we're taking a rest for a long time. Like, we're going to move, certainly before the end of the year, and I think ETH2 will be a catalyst. It'll definitely be like more excitement.
Oh yeah, definitely. We'll put pressure on every other team and competitor to also deliver very quickly after. And yeah, like it's gonna unlock a ton of use cases because right now we're kind of stuck with DeFi and maybe NFT artists because some art is valued very expensively, and so despite the friction, it's still
But when I think about this from the perspective of something like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like I think art is definitely kind of near the tip of the pyramid and not the base, right? So in a sense, like I think that what we're doing with NFT and with art is I think we're preparing for the next push, right? Driven more by the infrastructure, which is if the infrastructure causes a huge lift, right? Like let's say like ETH2 staking begins and we start to see like ETH kind of rising, right? I think that's the amount of infrastructure lift that can support more artists, right? And can support more, right? Because what will happen is that will spawn larger Ether super whales, which will start to become more patrons for like artists and, individual creators and entrepreneurs and, sort of human individual coins like Alex, so there'll be so many, it'll be more like a Renaissance feeling, right? But there has to be kind of a deeper infrastructural power that kind of drives. And I think that the drivers will definitely be the solutions for ETH scalability, which are coming, right? Which in some ways, some are already here. I think, Scale just did a deployment into mainnet, so that's exciting. So there's a whole bunch of, I'm gonna have Jack Halloran on the show. We'll talk about that, and so we're definitely seeing. That's where the lift will come from. Like I think there's a big heavy lift coming, and we're gonna see. I think the positive results on the top. So I think to me the NFT artist thing is. It's in some ways it's preparation. Like we're preparing for the next really big lift.
Yeah, totally agree with this. And like super excited because there's more use cases than just finance. And yeah, like it's definitely more diverse crypto before the huge boom than the internet in the 90s, which was a bit more, USA constrained. And now it's a bit more diverse. And yeah, like, artists will get wealthy and others. And so they will fund other artists and it will be like a new, high income class, and it's awesome, and it's more diverse than ever before in any other revolution, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that in a way, when you really look at the cultural ethos of kind of Ethereum from its beginning, there's definitely a lot of cultural creativity. There's a lot of kind of artistry. There's a lot of affection for this type of ethos, not to make a pun, so I feel like, we're going to see the emergence of something very grand, and I think that, without being overly ETH-centric, we're already seeing kind of even more diversity, right? Like the Neo blockchain, which was originally launched in the form of something called Ant, was originally touted as like Chinese Ethereum. And they've launched the Flamingo project, which has locked to date $1.6 billion, not all of it in Neo. Like we're seeing, USDT, we're seeing a ton of other things, assets moving in, looking for novel yield and liquidity, right? So that's a big experiment in kind of like novel layer one, and we're going to see others. We're going to see other kind of novel layer one solutions emerging with DeFi, and so obviously the Cosmos and Polkadot, parachain, metachain constructs are emerging as well. So it's going to be fascinating, and it'll be a very exciting and kind of dizzying next phase. I think in a way, like for now, I think it's wise to consider this to be a breather. Obviously, none of this is investment advice, and market timing is always opaque. So if anyone tells you they know what the market timing will be, I think it's perhaps there's so many large macro forces that make it's like even kind of on a global scale. Things like U.S. presidential election, like can potentially affect things like the macro from the perspective of policies of the Federal Reserve in the U.S. and all of those macro elements are U.S. centric, but obviously the world is very interconnected. So there's so many other and those are to me just local. Being in the U.S., those are just local examples of macroeconomic forces that could influence the price of Bitcoin, which could subsequently influence everything else, right? So those are all very, very hard to predict. So I'm not. It's super hard to say like buy now or sell now, And I always avoid saying such things because it's unhelpful. Like people should do their own homework and build their own thesis, and they should really do the work.
100%. Yeah, it's always so hard. And this is probably why there's some, accredited investors law, even though they're not perfect, is to stop from and protecting investors, right? That's kind of the root.
I mean, I would love to give meta advice, right? Which is my meta advice is that people should be playing with this stuff, And I think you're a shining example, right? Like you've been playing with the personality token or whatever you want to call it, personal token, and like the if this really is like like the early 1990s internet, then people should definitely, they shouldn't necessarily be like mortgaging their house and buying Bitcoins, like that might not be the appropriate thing. But like, to me, if you're not playing with it, you're not going to even have the ability to get it. Like you're not like, there's a lot of no coiners that like are just really against it. And like, it's sort of, I get the reaction. I get, there are scammers, there are hackers, there are all kinds of negative forces in here because of human greed. But like, I don't know, like if you're not playing with it, like, you might miss something significant.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's almost like insurance, like having a few percent in your portfolio,
yes.
Just a tiny bit. And sure, there's tons of bad investments. But like there's the Lindy effect, where the longer something exists, the better it is. And Bitcoin and Ethereum, they've been around for a long time now, and maybe other, like fundamental applications with lots of usage that could expand if the technology goes better. So if you can extrapolate the future, like what will get better, and if they get better, what applications, what blockchain will benefit the most. There's a lot of bets to put here. But again, yeah, of course, as you said, no financial advice. I'm a terrible trader and investor. I just have ETH because it's pegged to the ALEX token, and I think it's
ETH is amazing.
Easiest, risk/reward, and it's a commodity as well. So
I suspect that my gut feeling is that ETH is going to outperform, and obviously
a lot of tokens.
Yeah. And to me, like, you have to think about it more from a Sharpe ratio risk adjusted perspective, right? Because I can always find you some shitcoin that's outperforming ETH, right? There's always going to be one, like, like on a given day during any given time period, right? But like, it doesn't mean that you should take everything you own and buy the shitcoin. Like that's it makes no freaking sense. So like from a risk adjusted perspective, like ETH will, to me, feels like an incredibly outperform type of an asset, going forward. So obviously not investment advice, but if there is a meta advice, like the meta advice is just like, you should absolutely be playing with this stuff. And to me, there's a word in Singapore called kiasu. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it basically means that it's fear and hatred of losing. Right. And you need to get rid of that. And the way you get rid of that is by using small amounts, right? In the sense that like in college, like I bought Apple stock, and my thesis was, this is a good company. I like the brand. It's the company's not going to die. Or at the time, the company looked like it was going to die. It had really bad, not Steve Jobs management, and the company was declining. And you know what I did is I panic sold. Like it dropped and I sold at the bottom, like at the rock bottom, and it was like, wow, like that is amazing. Right. But here's the thing is, I lost the theoretical amount of money that I would have lost is probably very large. Right. But like on the flip side, like it's a valuable lesson. Right. So to me, like, it must be present to win. So like, everyone should dabble, and if you lose, like you should just be like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what can I learn from that experience? So that's what I think.
100%.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really great conversation, and really appreciate you coming onto the show from your space station.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miko. Really appreciate it, and love to pick your brain anytime.
Anytime, yeah, terrific. Talk soon. Bye.
Miko Bits.